ahead and hit the gavel here.
There you go. Sit down, man.
Can y'all sit the down, please?
Yeah, what the is going on here?
Okay. Defense. Do you have any witnesses you'll be calling at this time?
I don't believe either of the defendants wish to take the stand. Could I just get a confirmation of that from both of you?
Yes.
Well, I mean,
No,
Yeah, I don't want to go up there. Ramee, you should know
I
this.
think I need this.
No, Ramos, you're a bit tired today.
You're tired. You're tired.
I don't think it's a good idea.
Okay, dude.
I got a meth one for us later.
Oh, say less. Come on, yeah, let's wrap this.
All right. Yeah, they're not taking the stand, Your Honor.
I don't want to take the stand. I just want to give a statement.
Then Counselor Braun, would you like to go ahead and highlight evidence at this time?
If they're gonna load it into their closing, I want to hear theirs before I show them mine. So
Okay.
we'll just get to them first.
Very well. If neither defendant is going to testify at this time, you're going to go and lump your evidence into your closing.
Correct.
That leaves me with a question for the courts. How are we on closings? Are they ready? Do you need
Put your all
time?
into the
What are we
Smurf.
looking at here?
Always
People
ready,
are
Your Honor.
okay, Your Honor.
I'm ready.
My life is on the line here, Murph.
Okay. In that case,
Don't sweat it.
Straight
Say it was
closing.
Miguel's bombs. We're good.
Take your dick out to make a statement,
Prosecution,
too,
You're
while you
ready
say
to
it.
go. Go ahead and go first.
People will pay better attention.
Alright. Flip another correct
There you
page
go.
here. All right, let me know when you are ready, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
All right, thank you, Your Honor, and people of the court. The foundation of this case began to cement on June 12th, 2023. Carmine Gallo, whose name appears at the center of this investigation multiple times, became the target of the Chang Gang, which I'm just going to say CG from this point forward. Specifically, Mr. Kebun, and Ramee al-Rahman began a series of orchestrated and escalating attacks against Mr. Costello's colleagues at the Department of Corrections. The People's A on June 25th, 2023, Bob Eagle was kidnapped alongside Mr. Costello. Mr. Costello was subjected to a, quote, surprise surgery using a, quote, medical Beretta 9mm to, quote, revive him during the kidnapping. Both victims were abandoned outside of Bolingbrook, and admittedly, no suspects were directly identified. However, investigators have narrowed in on this incident as the start. The People's B, June 27th, 2023. Mr. Costello was transported to jail on contempt charges. DOC officers, along with members of the Unified Police Department,
confused them with me
K
sitting here.
broke into and subsequently out of prison. When
think
he
I
was then
confused
shot
these guys
down
by
through the
sitting
course
here.
of, felony trespassing. Defendant Ramee al-Rahman
I'm
was
not
then
on trial.
witnessed by the UPD fleeing on foot and utilizing a grapple gun. And we're going to hone in on that, utilizing a grapple gun.
Murphy was
a common
right.
theme for defendant Ramee. Ramee was subsequently shot
Yes,
down.
you are the
found to have
only
a grapple
person who
gun,
uses a grapple
handcuffs,
gun.
and a phone number on
Confirmed.
his person. The People C, June 28th, 2023.
I'm
Mr.
confused.
K,
Am I in
Mr.
this trial,
Costello
or is it
were
Mr.
both
K?
subject to an investigation.
I don't know why
prison,
you're here, Miguel.
in which the DOC officers indicated that Mr. K had returned to the prison following
Fuck,
his release
hey,
and
if I go
quote,
down for it, you're
shot a
taking my
member of
spot,
DOC
okay?
in the chest in the front lobby of the visitation center. The victim of that attack, DOC Correctional Officer Bobby Charles, stated that Mr. K told him, quote, never stay too close to the windows before shooting him. The People's E, June 29th, 2023, UPD officers responded to distress calls at Bolingbrook and found Mr. Costello, Mr. Charles, and other correctional officers injured, with Mr. K and defendant Ramee on scene. The statement of correctional officers indicated that a confrontation arose between Mama and Mr. Costello, at which time Mr. K withdrew a hammer and started swinging, and Ramee entered the room with a katana, slicing at Mr. Charles and Mr. Costello. The same day, People's F, officers responded to
Wait, what?
another
Mama
distress
literally
call,
testified.
from correctional officers
said,
indicating that defendant Ramee had held Mr. Costello hostage inside of the prison and was negotiating for a lower prison sentence. Defendant Ramee was witnessed by guards taking a call from individuals he referred to as Mr. K, and then Mr. K was identified by officers using a grapple gun to enter Bolingbrook. People's F, June 30th, 2023, that's when things escalated. Mr. Costello and Mr. K entered into a conflict. Mr. Costello was found at the Chain Gang Cubby in Little Seoul when Mr. K called Commissioner Sam Bass to mediate the conflict between the two. This ended in tragedy as Mr. Costello twatted an image from the top of the Elysian Fields Bridge, stating it was the, quote, winner POV, while Mr. K and Commissioner Bass were found in critical condition below the bridge. Later that same day, the UPD responded to a call documented in the People's G indicating that Eugene Zuckerberg, another affiliate of CG, had also broken into prison. Upon arrival, an officer was confronted by a man in a black suit with chest armor who poured gasoline all over their vehicle and ignited it, instructing officers to, quote, stop following them. The reporting officer indicated not only that this individual sounded like Mr. K, but that a vehicle registered to Mr. K was located very nearby. July 2nd, 2023, the People's J, 10 days before the incident that we're here for today. Things escalated once again when Bobby Charles of the DOC indicated that 5 to 6 individuals approached him and started making rattlesnake noises, striking him with a sledgehammer.
I'm confused at this point.
July 6th, 2023, as documented in the People's K, officers of the UPD located Mr. Costello and 2 other guards heavily burnt with spent casings of an RPG on the ground nearby. Correctional officer statements, specifically from Officer Charles, indicated, correctional officer statements indicated that Officer Charles had previously waterboarded Mr. K and that Mr. K had a vendetta against both CO Charles and CO Costello. When CO Gold
Man, it sounds like a lot of stories of Carmine getting hoed around, man.
The prison, Gold approached Costello, at which time he was taken hostage, flown into the sky with a helicopter, and pushed to the ground.
Wait, what?
And finally, July 12th, 2023, the People's M, hours prior to the first explosions at SDSO and MRPD. Mr. Costello was getting married to France Gall. Not a marriage of love, but infatuation of a
and also,
that
chat,
Gall apparently owns.
If all this is being said in his closing statement, is everything he said in this case now can't be used against me in another case?
And during the
or does it not
ceremony,
work like that because this isn't my case?
Directly identified as Rosa Garcia and Carmela Corset, both affiliated with CG, approached Miss Gall, pulled her to the side, and then the church exploded mysteriously, injuring everyone near the front of the church closest to Mr. Costello, including Mr. Costello himself.
Not your case, okay.
None of this suggests direct responsibility for the crimes that were present for him.
So why the
what it
fuck
does
did you
suggest,
just say?
however, is motive. It demonstrates an ongoing and escalating cycle of violence between members of CG, including defendant Ramee and Mr. Costello, beginning with simple kidnappings, attacks with blunt and melee instrumentations, and culminating in bombings. Now, to piece the evidence of July 12, 2023 through July 14th together. The primary report, the People's End, documents the series of events on the night of July 12th. Noted by Deputy Bayo, at the time the bomb was planted, Mr. K was being interviewed by Commissioner Sam Bass at the SDSO. To quote, Mr. Kebun took a phone call with Carmine in front of Bass and Bayo talking about $200,000 to $500,000 loan and RPGs. This is corroborated by the affidavit of Red Harrington and the testimony of Mr. Costello. Mr. Costello was being driven by Harrington throughout the day, spent all of his money at the casino, and was in desperate need of a loan. Despite their conflict, Mr. Costello calls Mr. K asking for money, quoting the devil you know in the interview that we took with him. They travel to the SDSO with the intent of getting a loan from Mr. K.
Bro, is this all about me?
Around this time,
I don't
Sergeant
know.
Shelby Lane was
I got in
talking
very
on,
late.
What the fuck is going on?
approximately 0200 UTC. She's running to the Sonora Desert Sheriff's
How's
Office
Ramee been?
on duty, and she witnesses 2
Good.
blacked out suspects grappling from the SDSO building and getting into a black and colored vehicle. As soon as the suspects begin running to the car, Lane hears beeping coming from the SDSO that sounds similar to a bomb. Around the same time, Detective Aurora Rain is approaching the SDSO for vehicle maintenance prior to the bomb being reported via 311, 911, or
What's up,
radio
boys?
traffic. To quote her report, while approaching the SDSO, a large black Helena-looking truck frequently seen at the Changaloa compound was on the northwest corner of the SDSO.
Oh, man.
An individual dressed in black.
Yeah, right over there, bud.
I think they thought I was on trial.
Bro, they mentioned you more than they mentioned Miguel.
I know, I think I confused them by sitting up there.
Thus,
did.
two officers obtained
like your
partial
fucking
identity
name was on there, not his.
unknown and or Mr. El Rahman on the scene, an identification further enforced and supported by later evidence. After the bomb was reported, multiple units arrived on scene. Game Warden Tessa Lamb, Sergeant Aaron Bison, Sergeant Brian Knight, myself, Senior Ranger Bundy, and Corporal Mike Bayo.
Okay.
Mr. Costello arrives on scene along with Red Harrington as the units scramble to the scene and start to gain control of it. Mr. Costello offers to defuse the bomb for money.
I think now he's just
which he
going over
discusses with
evidence.
Mr. K on the phone, and Carmine and Harrington are both detained by Tessa Lamb and Sergeant Bison. Sergeant Bison arrives with his ride-along, ultimately locating the bomb on the roof, discovering that it only had a minute and a half remaining prior to detonation. Commissioner Bass indicates that Costello was going to defuse the bomb, but Sergeant Bison advised that they leave the bomb to detonate because there's not enough time by the time this decision gets made. Commissioner Bass orders Costello to be released from detention to attempt to defuse the bomb, but as he approaches, the bomb detonates. Mr. Costello is then transported to Sandy Shores Medical for treatment, detained by Sergeant Bison and Game Warden Lamb, and Mr. K is taken by Bayo and Bass to MRPD.
You okay? You okay?
The bomb detonated at exactly
yeah, man.
0209 UTC on July 13th, 2023. 2 minutes and
sleeping?
15 seconds later, at 2:12 UTC, Ramee El Rahman calls Commissioner Bass. His cell phone location at that time places him directly at the SDSO. To clarify, limited civilians were aware of what had even happened at this stage. It all happened very quickly within a 5-minute time span. And even fewer are aware that Mr. Costello is present at the explosion or that he's even taken into custody. Civilians directly on scene are Mr. Harrington, EMS, Deputy Mayor Nancy Drew. That's it. Also aware were Mr. Costello and Mr. K, but they're both in custody, so they can't tell anything. Shortly after, Mr. K twats. Quote, Carmine is a goddamn criminal. He just blew up Sandy Shores PD. Shortly after Mr. K, Commissioner Bass, Corporal Bayo, they arrive at Mission Row Police Department while Costello is en route to Beaver Bush Ranger Station. Another 911 comes in. All capital letters, if you don't release Carmine from custody, we are going to bomb again.
Like
Units attempt to negotiate via 911, and Corporal Bayo is responding to the 911s, and then a second one comes in a few minutes later. We aren't willing to negotiate, and since you didn't release Carmine, another PD goes. Around the time of the second 911, Ramee El Rahman receives a telephone call. That call is triangulates his phone directly to the area of Mission Row Police Department. Sergeant Knight and Senior Ranger Bundy, that's me, were on the phone when Knight hears beeping. He scrambles through the building, he clears it, he goes into the parking lot, he's looking for the bomb, he's making sure there's no civilians and no suspects in custody, he's clearing officers out, and ultimately he reaches the rooftop, finding the bomb on top of MRPD. Similar to the SDSO scene, multiple units arrive on scene and attempt to secure the area. Senior Ranger Bundy, that's me. I drive over to Sergeant Bison's location. I trade vehicles with him because he got head on by a street racer. And I travel to Beaver Bush, where Carmine's still in custody. Bison, meanwhile, travels to MRPD to gain control of the scene and to exercise EOD. Corporal Bayo and Commissioner
I think he's going over
Bass
the
ensured
evidence.
that MRPD was evacuated when Mr. K and Commissioner Bass determined that Mr. K would be able to defuse the bomb. Mr. K and Commissioner Bass ascend to the rooftop through the stairs. Meanwhile, EMS stages in the area. Chief of EMS, Kiki Pendragon, and her trainee, they hover about a half a mile away in life flight. Mr. K and Commissioner Bass step out onto the front roof, and the bomb has 50 seconds remaining. They're informed of this by Bison, and Mr. K turns to Bass and embraces him.
Fucking
He hugs
closing
him.
statement? What the fuck
And he
is
says,
this?
at least we'll go out together. Aaron Bison starts frantically attempting to defuse the bomb. He's ripping out wires, but unfortunately he's just not successful.
Goddamn encyclopedia.
According to EMS testimony, the bomb detonated not once,
It's like
Hey,
he's reading
I
a fucking
haven't told
Shakespeare
anyone this,
book.
but when me and Bass hugged,
and the late Commissioner
he got a boner right before he went out.
I knew you were gonna say his dick was hard.
Yeah, what?
Was it big or was it like just like a little stump?
You know, he was nothing special, but he sure know how to fuck.
He has no pulse. He's not breathing.
All right.
And he's not responsive to their attempts.
If they ever bring me up on stand, I'll probably tell everyone that just to make it on the record.
I think you should. I think you should maybe you should say something in the closing when
The
Bass
following
hugged
day,
you.
Yeah, he was
know?
horny,
July
yeah.
15th, 2020.
Yeah, that he was horny and he had a
Detective
boner for
Brian
there
Knight
being a bomb
made
set
phone
at the
call,
fucking Mission Row, you know?
which he documented for the People's S.
He was like trying to push my head down. I think he wanted me to suck him off like
Mr. K
before the
Like
explosion
blowjob
went off.
before he
Yeah.
dies?
He's like, damn, can you imagine getting blown up while getting a blowjob? I was like, all right,
Pretty
babe.
badass.
And then
Go
it
out
just,
the right way.
yeah,
Released
I
from
didn't have
intensive
enough
care
time.
the following day, and he's asking Brian now demanding to know who killed
That's just sitting right back there on
You
his
wanna
new
get himself
character.
off before the
On the
bomb went
same
off.
day,
If you really
defendant
think about it.
Ramiel Rothman
That's what he was
was
saying. He's like,
not
yeah,
one,
make
two
me
attacks
blow.
repelled
I said, okay.
documented
Make me blow,
in
baby. I think you should really say that in your closing.
Incidents he had no
You blew him really
recollection
hard,
of
huh,
whatsoever
sir?
during his recorded interview.
I couldn't get to it. I
However,
tried
for
to.
Knight's recollection of the People's
Y'all
S,
talking about a
Mr.
dead
K
dude, Mike.
indicated
Blue
he
eyes
was
for
seeking
sure that night.
revenge for a loved
Yeah,
one that he had
that's his
lost
limbs.
24 hours before. Knight gets a second call from Kay, who states that he's in an upside-down world and he's losing his mind. Knight then gets a third call from Kay stating that he did something bad. At that time, Knight, Bundy, that's me, and Kovacic travel to Sandy Shores Mines, and they locate Cap Terranova, stabbed as documented in the People's Queue. The phone records of Ramiel Rahman show that at almost this exact time, Mr. K texts Ramee a photograph of Terranova, Pigeon, lying face down on the
nice,
train
dude.
tracks inside of the
Nice,
mines of Sandy
dude.
Shores. And then he
Nice,
texts him,
dude.
lies, 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 the bird flies no more. The People's U around line 1500 or so.
Fantastic.
Spicy.
Mr. K, who loved Bast, who asked Bast to mediate conflict with Costello, learning that Bass was dead, became broken and started attacking his own allies, Ramiel Rahman, Cap Terranova, and Bobby Brown.
What the fuck?
Per the People's R, the following day,
What the fuck?
another bomb is planted. Deputy Velsing was at Beaverbush Park Ranger Station when he witnessed an individual with, quote, a black hoodie and a wingsuit on his back flee the area. Velsing loses visual, and then he sees a sports car circling and leaving the area. And Murphy's going to love this part because he's been asking all night. When asked in his affidavit, Velsing indicated that the suspect fleeing Beaverbush precisely matched the photograph of Miguel Almerian at the time that he was being interviewed by Brian Knight and Jeffrey Bundy. Following that vehicle disappearing, a 911 indicates that an explosive device has been planted at
Only one
Beaverbush
person has
Ranger
certain
Station.
clothing. I mean, everybody
Velsing
had
finds
the
it,
same
and then
clothing,
it
right?
immediately blows up. There was virtually no
They don't
chance to
just make
defuse it.
one T-shirt, one hoodie, one.
Beyond
you know what I'm
merely
saying?
identifying a similar
Someone could have
outfit,
robbed
the
him.
phone records of Miguel Almerian place Miguel Almerian in the area of the Beaverbush bombing, directly north of the
Holy
Valiant
shit,
area.
bro.
Further, Ramiel Rahman's phone records place him directly south of Beaverbush moments before detonation.
Jesus Christ.
Lines 23 and 24 of the cell phone records in the People's U.
I wonder how many words.
Mr. L. Rahman was interviewed, and the court's going to decide whether they strike that interview while they're in chambers. But this was July 15th, 2023. Brian Knight and Jeffrey Bundy we took him down to the Aegis building, and the recording's the People's AF. He agreed to an interview, was brought to the FIB building for a discussion, which occurred on recording, and he wasn't in custody, and no warrant had been issued for his arrest in relation to this. Defendant L. Rahman immediately began to discredit Mr. K as, quote, deranged and, quote, senile as fuck, apparently concerned with
That's
what
facts.
Mr. K may have said
The
to Brian
fuck?
Knight.
That's facts.
Per Rami's own statements, Mr. K was irate when Ramee informed him of Bass's death, slicing at Ramee with a sword. In his own interview, Ramee mentioned was the first one to
Am I on
mention
trial,
Commissioner
guys?
Sam Bass as the interviewers were about to ask about the stabbing.
keep
of
mentioning
Captain
your
Nah,
Rahman.
name.
but you fucked over.
Ramee contradicted the physical evidence. At
I think
multiple
you've given
times.
them
He
more
states he
evidence
wasn't
than
at
they've,
Beaverbush on the day of the
collected.
bombing.
Nah,
He
they're just
stated
cherry
he had
picking
not
shit.
been with Miguel Almerian
Half the shit's not
fired.
even accurate.
He stated he had not been at the SDSO at the time of the bombing, and this is all despite
This
phone
is so
records and
scary.
logs showing him on scene at the SDSO 2 minutes after detonation. Phone records showing him directly south of Beaverbush following that bombing. phone record showing him at MRPD 5 minutes prior to detonation, and Miguel Almerian's own statements on recorded interview that he had been with Ramee continuously for 3 days. And perhaps most interestingly, Ramee claimed that he was first in Little Soul Cubby and then, quote, just driving around waiting on Kay to be released from custody at the time of the MRPD bombing. But again, that's not what his phone records tell us. Following the incidents involved, Ramee was
I know, why didn't they call me up there? They mentioned me so much. I don't know why I wasn't listed as a...
in possession of a grapple gun. The same contraband which was witnessed in use by officers to scale the roof of the SDSO and which was likely used to scale the roof of MRPD. Another was found in his Little Soul apartment during his search and seizure. And one of the other separate incidents is the People's AO, crimes that he committed afterward. Miguel Almerian is interviewed on the same day as Ramee, and in that recording, Almerian denies any knowledge of the explosion at MRPD, but he states that he knew Commissioner Bass had passed away. Miguel Almerian stated on record that he had no relationship with Carmine Costello, but then he starts to go on this contention and stating that he, quote, beat him up every time that he saw him. Miguel also married his whereabouts to those of Ramee L. Raman. Quote, literally me and Ramee the last 3 days haven't left each other's sides.
Got GPS pings on
Miguel
the
stated that he was with Ramee on July 12, 2023. He states that he and Ramee were at the Yellow Jack prior to the explosion. And,
Miguel got to mention number 2.
He states that he believes that they were there at the end of it because they, quote, saw Mr. K and Carmine in cuffs outside of the SDSO. Miguel stated that he and Ramee, quote, just left and there was no reason for them to be there. After leaving Sandy Shores, Miguel says he and Ramee went back to the Cubby and Little Soul, stayed there for an undetermined amount of time, and then they were just driving around when they got a call about Mr. K and went to the hospital.
30th time you're pregnant?
Miguel stated that Ramee, Miguel, and Bobby were the only 3 present, 2 of whom were the later targets of Mr. K's revenge. What the fuck? Before.
What, Bobby?
The day prior to the interview, Miguel stated that he was with Ramee driving around in a black and color vehicle with a white stripe. Ramee was bitching about Miguel due to the car giving Ramee headaches and departed his presence in Little Soul. Miguel denied any knowledge of Ramee driving RC cars in the area of Vinewood following the bombing of the Beaverbush Park Ranger Station, which is interesting because in Ramee's interview, he admitted to that wholesale. Miguel admitted to being present when Ramee L. Raman was injured in the area of the mine shafts of the Vinewood Hills, stating that he and Ramee were responding to an unknown phone number. They saw cars at the mine shaft, and there were spooky sounds coming from some priest-like individual.
I was goddamn happy I was in the Bahamas.
Miguel also states that he was present at the Meriwether docks with Bobby and Ramee when Bobby went downstairs. Miguel hears the sound of a rocket-propelled grenade, and Ramee is injured and Bobby is struck but not incapacitated.
This is all fraudulent, man.
Miguel concurs with Ramee that Kay was upset at Bass's passing because Kay and Bass were in love, and Kay had been very distant since Bass's death.
It's cap.
Oh, that's perjury. You should be sent to jail.
Oh shit, Rosa.
The people ask that this court remember the burden that's laid before it, whether there's proof beyond a reasonable doubt that Miguel Almerian and Ramee L. Raman orchestrated the attacks of the SDSO, MRPD, and Park Ranger Station.
Disgusting.
To rephrase that burden, it is the duty of the people to convince this court that there is
no. You know, I feel bad for him. This the judge, bro. He's having to sit here and listen to all that.
That's your bonita.
Yeah, I know. And she's
bombs don't leave physical evidence behind; they leave rubble. A careful bomber leaves no trace. There's no cell phone activation. There's no fingerprints. There's no bullet casings. There's nothing on forensics. The people are left with only one option: construct a narrative through the evidence that's available. So, what is the evidence? Not one, but 2 officers got a partial identification of Mr. L. Raman.
Partial.
Sergeant Lane notes 2 individuals jumping from the SDSO roof, evading into a vehicle, hearing the bomb ticking. Detective Rain noted an individual matching the customary clothing and body type of Mr. L. Raman, utilizing a grapple gun as he...
What the fuck is a partial identification? The fuck kind of term is that?
After the
what the fuck?
Noting vehicles previously driven by members of the Changaloa cartel.
You either identified him or you didn't.
Members of CG, including Mr. L. Raman. 2 minutes after the bomb detonates, L. Raman is on scene according to his phone records. We know that Ramee L. Raman was on scene because of this. We know that the second individual spotted was therefore likely Miguel Almerian. quote, literally, me and Ramee the
Likely,
last 3 days
likely.
haven't left each other's
They
side.
don't know, but likely.
Case is based off of likely, man.
The 911 caller was an individual who knew that Carmine Costello was in custody. The individuals who witnessed Carmine in custody are limited to police officers, Deputy Mayor Nancy Drew, Mr. K, Ramee L. Rahman, and Miguel Almirian.
Cap.
Per Miguel's own statement, they saw Carmine being taken into custody. The 911 callers demand the release of Carmine, and then they plant a second explosive on MRPD, a device with a 5-minute timer. 5 minutes prior to that detonation, Ramee L. Rahman's phone records once again put him right in that area. Interviews demonstrate that the excuse that they were driving around. The next day, Mr. K awakens out of the ICU, learns that Bass has died, and he attacks
Everybody
Miguel
goes to Leisure
Almirian and
Bank.
Ramee L. Rahman, 2 of his associates.
Bro, this isn't going for another
Blows them up with
fucking.
explosives. Poetic,
Yo,
considering the
Commissioner,
way that
how,
Commissioner Bass had just perished the day before.
What's the pinpoint location?
And finally, on the 14th, Miguel Almirian and Ramee L. Rahman, contrary to the statements in interviews saying they had no idea about the bombing of Beaver Bush, are placed in the area of the bombing minutes prior to the detonation by their
No
phone
answer, huh,
records.
Bobby?
The dynamic duo who hadn't left each other's sides for days once again
If I
in the
were
direct vicinity of a
hypothetically dead,
bombing.
they would
A
be.
bombing tied to the first 2 through 911 calls referring
Specific.
back to the previous bombs. So the people ask this court, what other reasonable alternative could the evidence paint? Is it reasonable to believe that Ramee L. Rahman and Miguel Almirian happened to be just driving in the area every time these bombs were detonated?
Yeah, I mean,
Were they
speculation.
coincidentally
Well,
there?
yeah,
Is it a
coincidence.
coincidence that an enemy of CG, Mr.
Coincidence.
Costello, was
There you go,
blamed
wrap it
and
up.
centered on each of these 3 incidents?
Coincidence.
Mr. Costello, who Ramee L. Rahman had targeted personally several times alongside K. Is it a coincidence that upon learning about of the death of Bass, Mr. K targets Ramee L. Rahman?
Coincidence.
Did he and the
Fuck.
people both have it wrong this entire time?
He's just deranged.
Will the court accept the defense of continuous and unadulterated coincidences? I've been going on for a super long time, and I'm sorry about that. But anyone who knew Commissioner Bass would know that he was a huge fan of metaphors. He was also a fan of butchering them, but that was part of his charm. So I'm going to quote one of our former presidents in closing. There's an old saying in Tennessee. I know, no, it's Texas, probably Tennessee. It says, "Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me, you can't get fooled again." Don't get
Okay.
fooled by the defense's statement that there's
He
no
fucked that
proof
up
or
so
that the
bad.
allegations are
Butchered.
coincidences. Find the defendants guilty, Your Honor. Thank you.
How did he
Listen,
fuck
I
that?
think they're
That's
good.
such a well-
Okay, everybody wake
There's
up.
no-
Alright,
speech.
well,
Anyone got a time check on that?
25
checking.
minutes and 54 seconds.
Jesus Christ.
Bro,
I thought it was listening to
hold
fucking
on,
Shakespeare
everyone
album.
stretch out, open your eyes, get some water on your face.
Go at least
Fuck.
39.
I was not going for a record, Your Honor.
Oh, I actually might need to put
Was
some
that a
water on my
Shakespeare
face.
book that came out of?
Adams, I just sent you a picture. Can you put it up on the thing for me, please?
Oh, Lord.
Let me look at it real quick.
Here
It's on your phone?
Without a
I just finished my
reasonable
Scavron. Are we
doubt
still going?
that he did this shit, all right?
This
Yeah,
wipe,
it-
really?
It's the
Yeah, of
Quidinky
course.
Dinkies. Quidinky Dinkies, you know?
Pinpoints,
heard of French
revenge,
guys.
Carmine.
Alright,
Bass.
sure.
Come on.
No,
It's
that's
not
over with.
probative evidence.
That's enough to pin murder?
All right.
I think
okay.
it sums up Ramee's response.
So anyway, as we were saying, guys, well,
What the fuck
here's
is
my
that?
closing statement. Your Honor, I was not seen at any of these locations. Per Bundy's testimony, a person in black
Oh my God,
was
Ramee's doing the closing
seen
statement?
at the SDSO building. If that is the case, this entire courtroom is guilty of the murder of Sam Bass, if we're gonna go by those jurisdictions and laws.
But they got his phone.
Your Honor,
Jurisdiction?
shut up, Brian.
Wild.
Your Honor,
Yeah, I think
every
he's
single
forgetting
testimony
that
here,
part,
all the
Bobby,
reports and the evidence
purposely.
all state that I was not ID'd at any situation.
what I'm saying,
Frankly, Miguel wasn't even mentioned this
I
entire
think he's
court case.
filling out the
And yeah, that's all. Your Honor, I didn't do this. I didn't do
That's
this.
all.
I'll let Murphy give the long
What
one.
kind of
But,
fucking?
this is
fucking
This guy
I'm
watched.
Ramee
I got super
everyone.
tired.
This guy
Fucking-
watched Suits.
I
That's
got super
beautiful.
tired.
I'm convinced.
Listen, I'm gonna keep it real. I got
Bro,
hella
this guy-
tired after
What the
fucking.
fuck?
Why didn't you
Bun-
bring up the
Bundy's
baby?
speech.
What the fuck was that, man?
I'm not
Alright.
gonna lie here, Ramee. That That wasn't very Mike Rossio.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
gonna be
but-
honest with you. I'm like,
what was that?
I'm tired as fuck after Bundy's fucking.
I told you, being a lawyer is
Yeah, I had to make some cuts.
not
to
the
mine.
move for him, man.
Yeah, make some
What
cuts.
And you
happened.
didn't even read
I
that.
made some
Free
cuts.
case.
I made some cuts.
He gets
Cut it
tired
down.
and ends up.
All right. I had a whole eulogy for Bass that got cut. Sorry, I was gonna
yeah,
do a
please.
few words for him, but
Fuck that
yeah,
guy.
nah, we don't.
We'll have
need
to talk
do
to
that.
Ramee. Every show you watch,
So
man, you don't
listen,
have
in
to.
a case like this,
Bass.
it's super important to get it
Oh,
right
fuck.
because you're dealing with a lot of circumstantial facts and evidence, a lot of inconclusive.
Bro's
as
facing death.
Bundy put it,
I'm
partial
tired. I'm tired. Forget about it.
identification, I guess is the euphemism for not seeing a motherfucker.
Oh, fuck.
I mean, just to give an indication of the standard, because I was at this deposition. Let me find the partial quote. I didn't see his face, but I was pretty sure it was Ramee because he had a black shirt and a sword. That's the level of identification that we're talking about. We're talking about those two officers in Bundy's
Bust it
closing.
down.
Black clothing,
bonito right
two
there.
individuals.
You-
Couldn't
you-
see whether they were wearing helmets or masks.
Oh, she's
That's
dancing. Is that a
how
problem?
good the description was. And the other person,
Yeah,
the
is there
other
a
officer
problem?
said, I am pretty sure it was Ramee, but I didn't see his face. So let's make
okay
that
with
clear on the
dancing?
identification
You're not okay with
to
her
parrot what
sleeping on the
Ramee
floor.
said.
the floor is
It's
fucking
very
dirty,
important to
Bobby.
get it right when it comes to an accumulation of evidence like this, especially given that most of the witnesses that have either given affidavits or given sworn testimony are fellow law enforcement officers. Everybody who is an officer of the court or an officer of the law knows roughly how that is weighed generally as evidence. It cannot be discounted in this case. We are not only talking about the death of a police officer, we are talking about a beloved figure in their community, a former commissioner who's held high in esteem amongst most law enforcement. Their zeal to seek justice in his memory is to be commended, and it is to be respected. And I do respect that they are trying to get justice for Sam Bass, however best they can, and at any cost, and at no expense spared. So
I hope we get the verdict today. We might.
They've tried the best case before them, insofar as that goes, and they have my admiration. But those facts and inconclusive statements and testimonies do need to be weighed a little differently, because there's almost an institutional bias about Sam Bass that is not negligible. Now, the facts and forensics of this case have clearly fallen short of expectation, given the mention of partial ID and little catchphrases like that. There's no smoking gun here. We have a lot of unconnected.
Murphy read my
reports
mind.
being tied
That
together
partial ID shit, I was
primarily
like, what is a
by
partial ID?
First-hand eyewitness.
Like,
Mr.
either ID the
Costello,
guy or not.
whose
What the fuck is a
credibility
partial ID?
Is verifiably questionable at best. It has been determined that it is a two-way street of hostility between Carmine Costello and members of Chang Gang. So his capacity to lie or mislead or deceive in an effort to cause hurt and pain to the defendants is also
He's
not
told his
negligible,
ass.
and his credibility must be weighed accordingly. Like I said, the reports listed in the people's evidence barely mention the defendants, barely mention Miguel or Ramee.
Fucking mentioned me the whole day.
The phone records, insofar as text messages, there's nothing incriminating there. Phone calls that were made or received that have been mentioned, weren't even answered. There's a lot to go through and not come up with much in terms of the evidence. And I was expecting to hear some sort of bombshell, and I never really did. It's understandable to
boy
want
Murphy
justice.
cook.
Murphy always
I have
got to throw a
no doubt
little.
that the people are confident they have the right targets, but
Little
they may
jabs
be
in
a
there.
little too confident of that. They may have succumbed to a bit of
Yeah, they didn't
tunnel
really
vision on this one.
do anything
But,
that
Yeah,
anything impressive.
it is interesting that Bundy said the job of the prosecution is to use the information available and to construct a narrative. While they have constructed a narrative, I do believe they have failed to use the information available. Now, I'm going to say some things, and I'd like to mention first that I've lost count since I started counting of the number of times witnesses, prosecutors have mentioned a whole lot of hearsay stated supposedly by Mr. K in this court case. And with that in mind, I'm going to move on to sort of the meat of this case. I'm going to refer to the prosecution's statement of claim as well as the closing statement where they state that Mr. K sought revenge for things that supposedly Ramee did and did in fact target Ramee and Miguel. There have been many utterances of hearsay of Mr. K in this case in relation to those things. So I'm left to ask myself, with all this mention of Mr. K and things that he's supposed to have said, why was Mr. K not listed as an eyewitness in this case? And, well, shit, you know, I can't think of a good reason for that. Because the prosecution's entire case is predicated and their motive is established based on the motives and actions of Mr. K against the defendants.
I was his MVP.
Also a victim and a material eyewitness to the murder of Sam Bass.
Mm-hmm. I was the one blown up with him. Like, why wouldn't you ask me?
Two reasons.
That's what I was
why
confused.
He wouldn't be listed as an eyewitness. The first one, which I want to be very clear, Your Honor, this is not what I believe.
I was literally there.
It simply slipped their mind. The second, of course, is that they had concerns about the testimony of Mr. K and how it may or may not line up with the narrative they're presenting here today.
Option 2.
They were afraid. They had a fear of what he might say under oath on the stand, and they acted on that fear. They're not allowed to do that, is kind of what I'm getting at. And they're especially not allowed to do that and then shoehorn a bunch of hearsay into their stuff. So in short,
Murphy cooked up.
The defense has the right to remain silent. The prosecution, on the other hand, subscribes to a different set of rules. They are not able to pick and choose which evidence to use in their case or which material eyewitnesses to select at their leisure. And there were many complications in this case. Things were sealed, and there were lengthy pretrial discussions regarding witnesses. And I can confirm that never at any point did Mr. K make it onto a witness list. So the second reason, of course, they would withhold him is for that fear. They do not get to act on that fear. If someone's statements and sworn testimony can have a direct impact on the proceedings such that they are mentioned roughly every 30 to 45 seconds throughout the entire trial and are paraphrased, quoted directly, and phone calls mentioned with parties who are deceased, guilt or innocence cannot be determined. And the length to which they've gone to put words into Mr. K's mouth suggests that they decided very early not to include him. And I waited all through discovery to see if they would add him or to potentially maybe add him as a defendant. I don't know. And the outside chance always existed that he would be called as a surprise witness. Seems like that kind of case. That window was slammed shut on the people's fingers. This is a very, very, very blatant, bold textbook Brady violation. And it's like a dismissed with prejudice kind of Brady violation. It is very egregious. And with that, I leave you with many, many things to chew on, Your Honor.
Your Honor, is that a motion to dismiss that the people need to respond to, or is that just kind of rhetoric? I kind of fell asleep for a little while there.
Just about to ask that.
Oh, you fell
actually.
asleep for this one.
Oh, that's how we doing?
That's crazy. I fell asleep on this
I
fucking
feel like
30
that's
minute
where you were
speech.
going, Braun. That's the vibe I was getting
yeah.
with how you brought that to the end. Are you
Oh, yeah.
introducing
Motion.
a formal motion to dismiss at this time?
Motion to dismiss with prejudice on the grounds of a Brady violation. They
I can-
excluded exculpatory evidence.
I can tackle this very easily, Your Honor. Show
Sure.
me a Brady motion on the docket.
Who's Brady?
If I'm familiar with Maryland versus Brady, which I
they
think
talking
that I
about Tom Brady,
am,
the
the
quarterback?
defense is required to file a
no
motion
fucking clue.
requesting exculpatory information, and Mr. Braun failed to do so. So Maryland versus Brady doesn't apply to anything in this case.
Violation. You can't.
Okay,
I'd
so
also like to add your-
the prosecution
They were
concealed the
brought
entire
back.
court case.
Hold on.
I started talking before she did, Your Honor.
I heard Ms. Colfax yell out for an additional rebuttal, but Mr. Braun did start speaking. I'll hear what you have to say,
I
Mr.
understand,
Braun.
but yeah. Sorry, there's a lot of talking.
Yeah, but you want to
You
just
will- you will
they
be
just
heard,
want to keep
Counselor.
interrupting me. That's fine. That's
You will
fine.
be heard, Counselor, but Mr. Braun, go ahead, please.
All right. Well, now I forgot what Bundy said. That, you know.
He stated that there was no motion for such on the docket, and therefore.
Oh,
this
okay.
would be
Right.
required.
So, you know, this is a very atypical case, Your Honor. A lot of the information flowed very slowly and secretly, and throughout the entire discovery process, like I said, I waited to see if he would be added as a witness or a defendant. If
Okay,
Yeah.
Your Honor, as part of further response, first I would note that this means that counsel noted that hole existed and chose to not motion for production or anything along those lines. One might argue that that's bad faith
so
on
we supposed
behalf
to
of
hold
the
your
defense
hand.
counsel.
Or poor litigation on your half.
Shut up, Ramee.
Mr.
I'm
O'Rahman.
Secondly, Mr. K has
Ramee, cook
mentioned
'em, Ramee.
multiple times there is a subpoena in which he is notified that his phone records were taken. His statements from Mr. K tonight are mentioned on multiple reports. And as the defense counsel just pointed out, his name is mentioned in the primary report this is attached to. They knew he was.
is this a
witness.
whole
They could've-
extra closing statement, Your Honor?
Shut
He's
the fuck
rebutting
up,
to your
Murphy.
response.
Oh, wait a minute. I'm not standing for that because I'm being nice, Your Honor. I wanted to stand for that, and I want my chance to speak.
Professionalism,
Bundy.
please.
That's the second time they've interrupted me while I was trying to respond, Your Honor.
I
All right, Your Honor.
understand.
Bundy's
Okay.
ticky-tack nonsense does not
how about-
override their responsibility to call every eyewitness to a homicide, Your Honor.
Your Honor, may I conclude?
Who the fuck did that?
I heard it over
Oh,
over there.
Is he getting
That's
contempt
Alex
for that?
Campbell.
Promise phone's going off.
It's Alex Campbell.
Is he getting contempt? No, I was listening to his response.
you,
There was
Bundy.
an interruption from the defense.
It's getting heated in here.
Murphy,
No, I should be
you,
contempt of
however,
court.
for that, absolutely will.
Murphy,
I
relax.
didn't even get a warning. He said, "Shut the fuck up" to me. I
I
said,
gave a
"Fuck you
blanket
back."
warning
He didn't get
because
contempt.
you were present for, sir.
So how come
You
didn't
gave
get
him the
that?
same blanket warning, Your Honor.
Yes, I understand he was interrupted, sir. I was addressing the court and you spoke over
I'm
me,
gonna die.
Mr.
I'm
Braun.
gonna die.
Yes.
I should get one just like he did, Your Honor. But whatever.
Just to wrap up, Your Honor, they knew that witness existed. They could have interviewed him. They could have called him. It's not a Brady
Jesus
violation
Christ.
because we don't have any additional information they haven't been given. We ain't got nothing to hand over.
Well, we know
And
what
again,
side
Your
the
Honor, I will
judge is
say
on.
that their ticky-tack
Come on, just be
nonsense over
honest.
there does not
You just say, "I'm
override the
gonna be
fact
broke and I'm
that
gonna
they
be
have a
homeless." That's what you
responsibility to
should
call
say.
every eyewitness to a homicide and every eyewitness who
Your
has
Honor,
material
we're-
facts to
we're
this
not
case.
limited to
Don't
two
need-
witnesses.
I don't need anything further from either side.
Yeah, and a
Mr.
judge.
Braun,
But I quit.
your
Oh, we know what side
concerns
the
are
judge is on.
noted,
I quit.
and I
sucked
understand
the
what
soul
you
out
are
of me.
leaning in towards here. I am going to deny the motion to dismiss the prejudice. at
Yeah,
this
no.
time. However,
no.
I will say, I will review the evidence at hand. I will refer the references to
I
the individual
do,
known as
but
Mr.
I'm in
K
a court
at hand.
case. Can you call me in a bit?
I will review them in the light that they are given. If it's just
Okay,
evidence to
fine.
conversations that were had directly without any factual evidence, I will view it as such. I won't
Yeah, I mean, I
necessarily
saw
take it
everything
as
happen. Why
gospel,
not
sir.
question me?
I will hold it and wait accordingly.
They chose not to
I won't
because
give
they
it
knew
the value that I
your
would something like an
responses.
I was the one that was. I
interrogation.
was
It's
the one that was gonna
illegal. They
suck
literally
Bass's dick
used you
and everything.
to put words in
With
your
that
mouth,
said,
and now they're
you
gonna
think
get
you're
away
right.
with
I'm the
it.
one that felt Bass's boner that night.
Your
No
Honor,
one
can I
else.
just say one thing?
Sure.
I just
You're
I
in
don't
love, and
understand.
they silence.
Let me just talk freely here, that you can tell me if I'm like a dumbass or not. All right.
Hey, yo,
listen.
was killed.
The entire court case, they put words that Mr. K said, done, and his actions have taken and
Allegedly.
didn't even question him or bring him up or do anything. Allegedly,
count.
of course, obviously.
Your Honor, may I rebut?
So how is
I
it
don't need
even?
I don't need a rebuttal here. I've already explained this.
I'm
to
not
you. Please-
objecting. All right, whatever. All right, go ahead.
This isn't necessarily an objection, Mr. El Rahman, as
I'm
I
just
stated,
curious.
and so I can kind of explain to you, right?
Oh, so
Um,
they woke up the beast.
With regards to evidentiary standards here and how this works, Mr. Spector, as I'm sure you're aware as
here we go.
an aspiring attorney, they are speaking to conversations that they had as direct witness, right? I'll admit the testimony, but I'll wait, but I won't hold it as heavily as I would something like your recorded interrogation with Brian Knight, as example, or Miguel's, or anybody else's. I'll take it under advisement and consideration. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's gospel. I'm not giving it the same weight or value as anything else that I would in this matter, sir. So while it's not inherently stricken from the record, and now while I'm denying the motion to dismiss at this time, I will hold it in such a light, sir.
Sounds good, Your Honor.
And Counselor Braun's concerns have been noted for the record.
I just want to say, guys, I'm right here if anyone has any questions. I've been right here the whole time.
Mr. K.
Do it jiggle?
You're far beyond that.
I'm just saying, I've been here the whole time, guys.
You have, in fact, been here the whole time.
Hey,
and I do
Mr.
appreciate
Judge.
you being-
Hey, is Murphy getting contempt?
Bro, you're
I'll
off.
stew on it and determine at the. I'll determine that at the time of a verdict.
Yeah,
I
because
understand.
I think I
the-
heard Bundy scream like a little pussy like 4 times after the fact you gave him contempt.
I will determine that at the time that I deliver this verdict, Mr. Elmiri, and I do
Appreciate it.
sir.
I can't
That
afford
said,
to get contempt.
I have
Ooh, that sound. Oh my god.
I haven't seen Bundy that pissed in a minute.
I need
49
more of
articles of
that.
evidence to review and
Yeah.
including
I wouldn't want the
a
park ranger to go
couple
kick an animal.
hour interrogations. I have 4 affidavits, 2 sealed depositions, and 3 bits of witness testimony to review. I have a 25 statement from Mr. Bundy, as well as you guys' closing as well to review.
Yo, can y'all
At this
motherfuckers
time,
move
I'm
down,
going to go ahead and
please? Y'all
retire to my
stinking up
chambers
here,
for
bro.
deliberation.
It's Carmella, man. She
This
keep on
will
trying to
take a while. I
push
am
us
not
around,
certain
bro.
that I will have a
Move over,
verdict
she's
this
not here.
evening. I will advise shortly whether I will ask this court to reconvene at a later time or if I can get to something this evening. I will let you know in short order. I ask that everyone remain here momentarily while I make that determination, and I will come in and address the courts as such at that time. For now, this matter is placed into recess while I go ahead and deliberate.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Holy fuck, Bundy got pulled by the balls and he cried.
Get shit on, guys.
Hoes mad. Hoes mad.